This is Asia's Farm to Fork 5 Good Questions podcast, bringing you insights and views from across Asia's food value chain. Now, for today's interview. Hi, everybody. I'm Duke Hip, host of Asia's Farm to Fork 5 Good Questions podcast. We're very fortunate to have another great guest with us today. We're joined by Miss Jade Dyson. She is the director with the Grain and Feed Trade Association, GAFTA, here in Southeast Asia and Pacific. Hi, Jade. How are you?
Hi, Duke. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
All good. And we're again grateful again that you're able to join us. So thanks for making time to chat. If it's okay, we'll jump into the first question. Well, look, first question is, I guess, within the realm of food and ag, GAFTA is a very well-respected and known name. But beyond that, perhaps there's not as much awareness about what GAFTA is all about. I thought it would be good to hear a little bit from you. I know, of course, I'll share this much. Of course, GAFTA is active in over 100 countries, developing the standard forms of contract on which 80% of the world's trade and grain is shipped, and a huge player, as I said, in this sector. But again, maybe a lack of awareness among some who are not paying as much attention to the sector. So, yeah, anything you can share about what GAFTA is all about and an overview of some of the activities?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, we represent over 1,900 members in over 100 countries, and our touch points generally tend to be in the supply chain, tend to be the traders, brokers, shippers, analysts, and service providers. So, we are best known for our standard form contracts, which, as you said, underpin about 80% of the world's grain trade. But we're actually much more than that. We are also the industry arbitration body. So, we offer dispute resolution. We run trade assurance schemes, training, and we have a strong voice in policy and regulation, helping keep global trade predictable and rules based. In Asia Pacific specifically, my role is to provide strategic leadership in strengthening GAFTA's presence, shaping our engagement with regional stakeholders and our member base, and championing issues like regulatory alignment and market access. So I work to ensure that the region's commercial grain and feed trade sector is connected to global standards, whilst also fostering dialogue between industry and policy communities. And we do a lot of work kind of reacting to industry changes in a market access and regulatory kind of space. And I think what makes GAFTA unique is our global reach combined with our on the ground relevance. And, whether you're in London, Dubai, or Laos, our goal is the same, and that's enabling smooth, fair trade for the industry.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. Trade is a huge topic these days, so I'm glad to have again your perspective and your views today on the podcast. So, the second question I'll get into here to talk a little bit about. We talk a lot about science-based, making science-based decisions. That it's that's the underpins so much of the regulatory frameworks that we talk about on this podcast, and that Crop Life Asia talks about, and certainly very active in. And so that's so important. At the same time, we know there are times that well-intentioned reforms designed in the spirit of promoting good health, sustainability, and trade actually end up doing perhaps more harm than good for farmers and consumers. And this in mind, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts around what can be done to really facilitate better agricultural policy making practices, collaboration, among private, public sectors, and even civil society as well. And what role can associations like GAFTA, Crop Life Asia, and others play to, improve the process?
Yeah, absolutely. To what you touched on, I mean, good agricultural policy needs to be rooted in science and also in market realities. And I think that's a really key point because without engaging the private sector early, even well-intentioned reforms can disrupt trade, which ultimately can reduce food availability and often hurts the livelihoods of smallholder farmers. So I think GAFTA plays a critical bridging role, helping governments understand the real world implications of changes to a lot of these things, whether it's tariffs, whether it's MRLs, whether it's SPS measures, in relation to food safety and biosecurity, or even on the sustainability standard side of things. Crop Life Asia and GAFTA are natural partners, being that you guys represent the inputs and innovation side of the agri-food chain, doing a lot more work on the farmer level, and we're focusing more on market access, logistics, trade frameworks, and on the trade side of things. It means that, together we provide a full kind of picture from seed to shipment, and that's what's vital in policy makings, especially in a region as diverse as Asia Pacific. Trade policy and innovation shouldn't operate in silos. And if we can bring those threads together, I think that's where we kind of build food systems that are fit for the future. And I think, it's what's most important is having engagement and buy-in from our industry. So that being our relationships with the government and their willingness to have an open dialogue and actually engage the private sector before decisions are made, for one. And then the willingness of the private sector to invest not just necessarily finances, but actually time in engaging with organizations like CropLife and organizations like GAFTA. We're only as successful when we have that kind of buy-in. So I think, that collaboration really is the kind of key principle in making headway in this space.
Mhm. No, thank you for that. Again, great answer. Um, Appreciate that. And I'm just thinking about something else. I know you're an organization you're involved with. Sorry, third question. I'm thinking about an organization called Women in Agribusiness Asia, or WOMAG, and we're here. I'm sitting in Singapore. I know, very active organization in this space, and I know you're also a member of that organization. And unfortunately, as you know, I'd like to hear from you your views on things, but the disparity on the farm between female and male farmers is still very much a reality, unfortunately. And we also know that that's doing damage not only to that particular group, but it's also doing damage to productivity on the farm. And that affects trade, that affects so many other aspects as well of food production, and is also in society. So I'd like to hear from you a little bit about that organization, maybe about the work it's doing, why it's necessary, and yeah, just get your views on that.
Yeah. So just quickly, I'm not currently on the board of WOMAG anymore, but I was part of the founding group that the founding kind of board that created WOMAG, and was leading that organization through its some of its really kind of foundational years. And that organization was really started to connect women through the entire ecosystem that is agriculture. So, really that farm to fork kind of connection through from a farm level, service providers, trading, markets, all the way through to the end user and the consumer. And I think WOMAG did a really, really great job of that. It's an organization that's open to both men and women, but it was designed originally to create a safe space for women to make those connections, to both network, to upskill, to kind of make those connections better in the industry, both for their own personal development, but also professional development, and making more commercially sound decisions by understanding not just your part of the chain, but actually understanding the flow-on impacts as you kind of move through that system. So through my work with WOMAG, we've definitely seen how gender and social inequality is often built into the system, but also how fast things can change with the right intervention. And it would be great if intervention wasn't necessary, but I think in the early stages of really getting that going, it is necessary. Women are essential to agriculture across Asia, often making up at least half, if not more, of the workforce. Yet they're earning less, they're owning less land, they're receiving less training. And when women have equal access to credit, to land, to training, the benefits ripple outwards, and not just from a productivity standpoint, but from improved family health and education for the next generation. And there's many examples of this, right? Like farmer field schools in the Philippines and Vietnam have lifted yields by specifically targeting female farmers. Agri-tech platforms in India and Indonesia have helped close the gender information gap by giving women direct access to markets and agronomic advice. Women-led cooperatives in sectors like cocoa and coffee are capturing value through traceability and social impact branding. But inclusion is also not just about gender, it's about youth, it's about Indigenous groups and migrant workers who face systematic barriers. And I think solving this requires really intentional system design. We're looking at data disaggregation, inclusive training, and value chains that reach beyond the usual players that we see. Um, whether it's through inclusive value chains or science-based regulation, I think the real opportunity lies in bringing people to the table who haven't historically or traditionally had a seat at the table. And, I think across the board, across industries, it's not just agri, that inclusion is no longer just a box to tick. It's a driver of innovation and resilience, and that's going to be something that's really important in tomorrow's food systems.
Thank you for that. Very thoughtful answer. And you're absolutely right. I mean, of course, it's not just limited to the farm. This is across the entire value chain. It's important the work World doing, and to address that. And also, it's not just the right thing to do. It's good for business as well. It's been pointed out, I know, on their website, and as you noted here too. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. I believe this is number four on the list. And we want to talk about no easy topics here. The next one we'll touch on is gets into climate and climate change. Um, no surprise here. It's a big topic in this region in particular, sort of the front line as far as the food production. Farmers, smallholders really are really in the crosshairs. So, according to the Asia Pacific Climate Report released last year by the ADB, Asia Development Bank, climate change can potentially reduce wheat yields up to 45%, corn yield over 20% by 2070 in developing Asia. Innovation is playing a huge role and could provide a valuable tool on this front, but their adoption and implementation in the region has been a slow process. Of course, we hear that a lot as well. The role of innovation is so central, but again, the stumbling block is always going to be the regulatory frameworks to underpin and really make sure that the farmers have access to the innovation. So again, with that in mind, and again, thinking about the impact on food systems and again, greater social environmental shocks, climate change sort of at the center of that with respect to more floods, more droughts, more disease, weeds, all of it to contend with. What can we do again? Private, public sectors working together to help ensure farmers have access to more innovation as opposed to less.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, this definitely, this starts to fall slightly outside of the remit of GAFTA, but we are stepping more and more into the sustainability space. We've formalized our values through GAFTA's sustainability pledge, which calls on the industry to support trade that's inclusive, transparent, and environmentally responsible. And the GAFTA sustainability pledge provides members with public recognition of their commitment to sustainable business practices and enables our members to promote their sustainable practices in one place and provides them with a sort of simple visual means of publicly demonstrating that commitment via the use of the Sustainability Pledge logo. So that's a little something that's happening within GAFTA. But as you say, climate change is already impacting food production, and the estimates of what we're looking at by 2070 are a little scary, particularly when we're talking about producing more food with fewer resources under increasingly extreme condition. And I think for the most part that the tools exist, the science is kind of going in the right direction. The barriers are less science, but more access and trust issues. Farmers are hesitant to adopt new tools without clear trade signals, infrastructure and regulatory consistency, which is understandable when, we have commercial or one end of the food chain has one goal, and that's often profitability. Although yes, a farmer is also looking at profitability, it's the very real implications are of feeding their family. So you can understand the hesitancy there. I think it's important that governments streamline approvals and align standards across borders and support education and extension. And I think the alignment of standards across borders is really key, particularly in an area in a region such as Asia Pacific, where it's such a varied region and things are really quite different from country to country. And when you've got a lot of grain crossing borders, that creates a lot of problems. So that's kind of one really key area. The private sector can certainly be investing in farmer-focused rollouts and bundled services and inclusive farming, inclusive financing, and making sure that's available. I think, I see that innovation only really delivers when it reaches the farm, but then connects with the markets. So that's why collaboration across science, policy, and trade is critical, so that farmers can adopt what works, but whilst also still meeting the demands of a global marketplace. Because the reality is, if it doesn't meet those demands, then it's just not going to happen, and it's not going to be implemented. So I think, we keep talking about this collaboration, but it really, without it, it means that we've got one solution over here and we've got kind of one practice over here, and there's just no connect between the two of them. And we can never actually implement any of these tools unless we can actually make them work in the real marketplace, because ultimately a marketplace is often about financials above all else. So we have to be realistic with how we're making these things work, and what tools it is that we're actually coming up with, and are they actually going to work in the real world?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, we hear that a lot here too as well. And all that collaboration is so important. But of course, maybe the biggest stakeholder probably has to be the biggest stickler in all this is the farmer, the ones who are actually
Yeah.
growing the crops as well, and what's going to enable them to do more with less. Okay, well, we're at the end. We're come to the last question, and you can look at it a few different ways, but it's either the hardest question or the easiest question. But this is where we just ask you your opinion on what is your favorite food in Asia? And there's so many good choices to consider. Um, yeah, and so again, maybe a tough question.
It is a tough question. I've spent 10 years in Asia, so I definitely have many favorites. If I had to pick one or two, I think anything Japanese is my ultimate favorite food ever. I think the freshness, the subtlety, their attention to detail, how much they care so much about every single ingredient that goes into a dish. Yeah, anything Japanese is my all-time favorite. But I also can't go past a roti prata with curry. It's the ultimate comfort food. It's a dangerous one, but it's just so good. So yeah, I think those would have to be my picks.
Yeah, no, those are great answers. I'm not sure if we've had those before, but maybe in North Asia, Southeast Asia, could kind of break it down that way. But that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Jade. We've officially
Thank you, Duke.
you've survived the five questions, and you're officially off the hot seat. So thank you again. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and if you did, please rate, review, and subscribe. We look forward to bringing you another Five Good Questions interview.